Story 1. The matches were meant for me. It happened a few winters ago, just outside a small lakeside town in Vermont. I had finalized my divorce 6 months earlier, and I won't sugarcoat it, I was unraveling. I needed to disappear for a while. Somewhere cold. Quiet. It was Riley, my girlfriend at the time, who suggested we take a week off, find some remote cabin with no cell reception and just exist. I didn't argue. We found this Airbnb right on Lake Clifton. Beautiful place, modern, 2 stories, all wood and stone. Huge windows facing the lake, a fireplace, and no other houses in sight. The host wouldn't be around, but he left detailed instructions on how to get in, where to find things, the usual. When we pulled up that morning, the first thing we noticed was the package. It was sitting right on the front steps. No postage. No return label. Just brown paper, twine, and a tiny note taped to the top. Enjoy your stay. Make sure to stay warm. Riley chuckled. Locals being friendly, I guess. Inside the box. A single matchbook. Plain. Old-fashioned. I thought it was weird, but harmless. The first 2 days were perfect. Long walks in the snow, cocoa by the fire, a couple bottles of wine. And quiet. Deafening, wonderful quiet. I should have known it wouldn't last. On the 3rd night, sometime after midnight, I woke up. First thing I noticed was the change in weather. The snow was coming down harder now, pattering softly on the skylight above our bed. The wind was picking up. Then I heard the sound. It was subtle, barely audible over the wind, but wrong. Not natural. Not the creaking of trees or shifting ice. This was mechanical. Steady. I got out of bed quietly, not wanting to wake Riley, and stepped up to the window. Out on the lake, moving slowly across the frozen surface, was a snowmobile. One figure. No headlights. Strange, sure, but not unheard of. People drive across frozen lakes all the time up here. But this was different. It was almost 1 a.m. And the figure was moving slowly, deliberately. Like they were testing the ice. Then they stopped. They climbed off and started waving. Big, frantic movements. Desperate. I leaned closer to the glass, squinting through the snowfall, and that's when I realized. They were facing directly toward our cabin. Toward me. At first, I thought they were in trouble. Maybe they'd fallen off the snowmobile. Maybe someone else was out there, someone hurt. I woke Riley, told her what I saw. She blinked at me, half asleep, until I said the words. There's someone on the lake. They're calling for help. I got dressed quickly, layered up, grabbed my boots. Riley stayed upstairs, said she'd keep an eye out and call for help if anything happened. When I opened the front door, the cold hit me like a wall. The snow had picked up, swirling in dense sheets. I stepped out onto the deck and looked out toward the lake. She was still there. That's when I noticed, it wasn't a man. It was a woman. She was bundled in a fur-lined coat, her dark braid whipping in the wind. She was shouting now, loud enough that I could finally hear. Help me. Please, I lost my son. Her voice cracked like she'd been crying for hours. I didn't think. I just started walking. The lake was frozen solid. No cracks, no signs of weakness. I felt confident enough to pick up my pace. As I got closer, she started sobbing, saying things like, "He ran off. I don't know where he went, he's out here somewhere." I asked if he fell off the snowmobile. She shook her head violently. "No, he ran away. I told him not to, but he always runs. Please, help me find him." It didn't make sense. None of it. Who takes a kid out on a snowmobile in a blizzard? Still, I kept walking toward her. Something about her voice, it sounded real. Too real. That's when she said something that made me stop dead in my tracks. She asked, "Do you still have those matches?" At first, I didn't understand. I said, "What matches?" She smiled. "Not wide. Not overt. Just enough. The ones I left you." My stomach dropped. Everything clicked at once, the package on the porch, the note, the timing. She had been to the house. She knew we were coming. Before I could even process what was happening, she reached into her coat and pulled out a small black pistol. Phone. Wallet. Now. I didn't hesitate. I handed them over. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped them. She didn't say another word. She turned, climbed back onto the snowmobile, and vanished into the snow. As soon as she sped off, I turned and ran back toward the house, stumbling across the ice. I was shouting before I reached the deck, telling Riley to call the cops. She already had. She was on the phone, shaking, trying to give them our exact location through sobs. I locked the doors, checked every window, turned on every light. For the next hour, we sat in the living room, waiting. I kept staring out at the lake, half expecting to see that snowmobile circling back through the whiteout. The police showed up about 45 minutes later. By then, the snow had already buried whatever tracks she'd left behind. They did what they could, asked questions, checked the perimeter, even searched a bit out on the ice. One of the officers found what looked like an old boat ramp on the far side of the lake. Their best guess was that she came from there. I wanted answers. I kept pushing them to investigate more, to check the woods, to at least try tracking the snowmobile. But the lead officer just looked at me and said, "In this weather? She's already long gone." We tried using Riley's phone to track mine, but it was already offline. The Airbnb host, to his credit, refunded the entire trip without hesitation. Sounded genuinely shaken. Said he hadn't left any package, had no idea what I was talking about. But that's what kept bothering me. How did she know we'd be there? There was no public listing anymore, it had been booked weeks in advance. And the package was there before we arrived. I told the cops I thought maybe the host was in on it somehow. But I had no proof. And Airbnb didn't seem interested in digging either. For weeks after, I kept going over the details in my head. Why the matches? Why the theatrics, the snowmobile, the crying, the fake story about her son? It didn't add up. If she wanted to rob someone, why us? Why a house that looked empty, in the middle of nowhere? Unless the robbery wasn't the point. Unless it was just the part one remembered. Riley thinks she targeted us because we were isolated. She says it was just random, opportunistic. But I keep wondering. What if she does this often? What if she waits in the woods every winter? Watching. Waiting for the next couple to show up. Bringing them a box of matches. And a note that says, "Enjoy your stay. Make sure to stay warm." Story 2. The attic was never empty. My parents own a small lake house near Bremerton, Washington. 2 stories tall, cedar siding, steep roof. It backs right onto the water, with a dock, an old canoe, and an attic that used to feel like the best place in the world when I was a kid. My sister Ava and I used to bring sleeping bags up there and pretend we were camping. We'd tell stories, sneak snacks, even bring our dog up with us, an old beagle named Scout. There was a little round window in the attic wall that overlooked the lake. It made us feel like we were watching the world from a secret tower. Like the lake was ours. As we got older, we grew out of it. By high school, the attic turned into a storage zone. When my grandparents passed, their smaller furniture and boxes of old keepsakes ended up crammed up there. It was dusty and cluttered, but comforting in a weird way. That attic always smelled like my childhood. A few years ago, though, we stopped going as often. College, work, life, too many things pulling us in different directions. The house sat empty for most of the year. My parents were hesitant to rent it out, especially with all the antiques, but eventually they met someone who changed their mind. His name was Wallace. Retired Navy, now working as a craft restorer. Small guy, wiry, mid-60s. Had a raspy voice and deep scarring down one side of his neck. Said he did woodwork, loved peace and quiet, and wouldn't touch anything he wasn't supposed to. My dad liked him immediately. Bonded over military stories. He even gave Wallace a discount on the lease, said the guy had earned it. None of us kids had a say, but I'll be honest, he creeped me out. There was just something off. Not dangerous, just strange. The way he spoke. The way he stared a little too long. But we didn't visit that summer, so it didn't matter much. Still, my mom had landscapers check in every few weeks. Nothing formal, just drop-ins. You know, just to make sure the place was standing. The reports always said the same thing, house in good shape, nothing unusual, though once, one of them mentioned they caught Wallace sitting on the porch for hours, just watching the water. And the kids on the beach. That's when my mom got uneasy. But Dad kept brushing it off, he's old, what else is he gonna do? He trusted him. Said he deserved it. Wallace moved out quietly at the end of the lease. Said he was going to Oregon to be closer to family. That was that. Or so we thought. About a year after Wallace left, my sister Ava graduated college, and we all finally managed to align our schedules for a proper trip back to the lake house. It was summer again. That golden hour light pouring over the water. Everything looked the same from the outside, peaceful, timeless. My parents had a new dog by then, a black lab named Bear. Big, loyal, friendly with strangers, but oddly alert. When we arrived, he wouldn't stop pacing near the foot of the stairs. Ears perked. Tail stiff. We brushed it off. Maybe the long drive had him antsy. Maybe he smelled old Wallace. It was already late, so we decided to grab dinner in town before unpacking. Bear stayed inside, curled up near the living room. We were gone maybe 90 minutes. When we got back, something was wrong. Very wrong. Bear wasn't at the door. The house was quiet, but not peacefully quiet. It felt hollow. Still. Then I saw him. He was sprawled near the stairs, breathing hard, his side rising and falling like he'd just run a marathon. There was blood on the floor, smeared under his paws. Ava screamed. My mom grabbed her phone, already dialing. My dad didn't say a word. He just walked straight to the kitchen, pulled a knife from the drawer, and handed me another. We moved slowly, checking every room. The ground floor was clear. We moved up the stairs, careful not to speak. At the top landing, my dad stopped cold. I followed his gaze, and saw it. The attic hatch. It was slightly open. Just a crack. But enough to see it wasn't sealed. And through the crack, we could see it. A faint, flickering light. My legs wouldn't move. Every instinct in my body screamed to back away. But my dad didn't hesitate. He reached up, yanked the hatch open, and climbed the ladder. I stayed behind. I heard the boards creak above me. Then nothing. No struggle. No shouts. A minute later, he climbed back down, calm. He whispered. "It's Wallace." My stomach turned. I couldn't understand. "He's sick," my dad said. "We're not pressing charges." My mom came storming up the stairs, still on the phone with 911. When she realized what was happening, she exploded. Full-blown fury. She screamed that she'd warned him. That we were all lucky Bear wasn't dead. But my dad just kept saying, He didn't mean to hurt anyone. When the police arrived, they went up into the attic and brought him down. Wallace looked fragile. Pale, shaking, skin like paper. He didn't resist. Didn't speak. He just kept his eyes on the floor as they helped him down the ladder. I couldn't look at him for long. He was wearing an old army jacket. And in his pocket, they found our house key. That nearly broke my mother. She turned to my dad and said, in this cracked, furious whisper, "You told me you changed the locks." He didn't answer. Bear survived, thank God. He needed stitches and meds, but he pulled through. The vet said it looked like someone struck him, probably out of panic. We'll never know what exactly happened up there. But there were food wrappers in the attic. A blanket. An empty bottle of water. He'd been living up there. For days, maybe weeks. Quietly. Hidden. He still had one of the attic keys. Probably one of the old duplicates. My dad had never rekeyed the place. Said it wasn't necessary. The cops asked if we wanted to press charges. My mom said yes. Ava said yes. But my dad refused. Flat out. He said Wallace was confused, probably homeless, maybe ill. That he didn't hurt anyone on purpose. That he probably didn't even know we were coming back. It became one of the worst fights I've ever seen my parents have. Ava wouldn't speak to my dad for months after that. And me? I never set foot in that house again. The worst part was realizing just how easy it had been. A key. A space to hide. A place that had once been his. I think about it all the time. Not just that he'd been in the attic. But that he could have been watching us. Listening. Waiting. And I'll never shake the feeling that Wallace hadn't left the house that year because he couldn't. That maybe, when his lease ended, he simply went upstairs and closed the hatch behind him. Story 3. There was a light across the lake. This happened last summer, in northern Minnesota. I was 21. My name's Nate. My best friend Carter comes from money. His dad's some kind of defense consultant with government contracts. They're the kind of family that owns 5 houses and lives in none of them full-time. One of those houses is on Black Pine Lake, secluded, scenic, and, for most of the year, completely empty. Carter's parents let him use it whenever, as long as he didn't throw parties. Naturally, he did anyway. But this time, it was just the two of us. A low-key weekend. I'd just gotten out of a relationship, messy, loud, long, and Carter said I needed space and beer. That part, at least, he got right. We were sitting out on the dock, watching the water go still under a burnt orange sky. The kind of sunset that makes you forget the rest of the world exists. Then I saw it. A light. Flashing from across the lake. At first, I thought it was a reflection from a window. But it didn't move when I shifted my head. In fact, it kept pulsing. 3 short flashes. 3 long. 3 short again. It took me a minute, but Carter caught it fast. That's Morse. SOS. I laughed. Okay, sure. When did you learn Morse code? He shrugged. Movies. It's like the only one everyone knows. I didn't want to admit I didn't recognize it. But once he said it, I couldn't unsee it. The pattern repeated again and again. I pulled out my phone, but there was no signal out there. And Wi-Fi? Carter's dad had disconnected it months ago after someone hacked their smart TV. We sat there, staring across the lake at the flickering second-story window. No one else was supposed to be out here. Most of the homes were seasonal rentals, empty this time of year. And that one, we both knew, had been vacant for years. Carter wanted to call the cops, but we were both half a beer away from a citation, and I was already dealing with a suspended license over a stupid mistake. I told him we'd just be wasting time if it turned out to be a prank or someone testing an old flashlight. Still, the flashing continued. Always the same pattern. Always from that upper window. Eventually, it stopped. We stared for a while longer, not saying much. Then Carter said, "We should check it out." I laughed. "How exactly?" He pointed behind us at the edge of the dock, where his dad kept a beat-up green kayak tied to a post. 5 minutes later, we were dragging it down into the water. At first, it felt like one of those dumb, impulsive adventures we used to do in high school. Sneaking into storm drains. Exploring shut-down factories. But the deeper we got into the lake, the quieter it became. Even the wind seemed to stop. Halfway across, Carter muttered, "I don't like this." The house came into view. A big colonial, gray siding, moss on the roof. The dock was partially collapsed. Half of it had sunk into the water. We aimed for the shoreline instead, pulling the kayak up onto wet stones. The grass was tall, untouched. We didn't go to the front door. We crept around the side of the house, looking for a way in. Every window was dark, until we found one near the back that was cracked open. Old wood frame. No screen. Carter looked at me. I looked at him. And we climbed inside. The inside of the house was empty. Not abandoned with junk or leftovers. Not vandalized. Just stripped. No furniture. No dust. No signs of life. We moved slowly, careful with every step. The wood floors creaked under us. We found the stairs and started up. I made a mental note of every turn, just in case we had to run. The second floor was just as silent. Cold, too. We walked down the hall toward the window where we'd seen the light. There was one door at the end, closed. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. Then I turned the knob and pushed it open. The room was almost empty, except for a small object by the window. I walked closer, cautiously. It was a projector. One of those old slide kinds. Facing the glass. And next to it, an outlet timer. Like someone had set it to flicker at exact intervals. Carter backed away. Fast. I turned to follow him. That's when we heard it. A door behind us swinging open. Then footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Coming from the hall.